This is Real Talk Radio. This is Real Talk. High Praise Ministries presents Real Talk. This is Real Talk Radio. This is Real Talk. High Praise Ministries presents Real Talk.
All right, we back. Did you finish clutching your pearls? Oh my goodness. They had a sex commercial with toys. All right, so hey, it's 8:30. Folks should be ready for the after dark type stuff, especially when we get to the banter. So anyway, let's go ahead and get into this first topic. I am a fan of this first topic because it can go multiple ways in multiple areas dealing with multiple things. For quick background, I heard Godfrey, who is a comedian I like, happened to hear a snippet of his podcast. I don't really know the name of his podcast because I don't listen to his podcast, but you know when you go on YouTube, it has to recommend your stuff. Well, the caption is what caught me. Just let me hear him talk about it. And what they were talking about essentially was, why is it that it's kind of the inverse of what we did on our last podcast. For those who listened to the last podcast, we asked the question, why can they do it and we not do it? Why is it okay when they do it and we not do it? Well, this is in that same manner of, except it's kind of the reverse now. Why is it acceptable to tell us to move on from our trauma, from our hurt, but no other person, no other race really has to deal with that? And really, you can also absolutely split that up and deal with that in terms of gender as well. Women are always told to get over some stuff when you never really hear that being said to a man ever. But where he was gathering that from is I'm trying to make sure I parse my words because I forgot Facebook likes to shut stuff down for any and everything now. The people who survived the Nazi, I don't know what word to say, but that time frame, the Jews who survived that, I don't know if I'm allowed to say the word blank survivor, I don't know if I'm allowed to say that or not, but they're never told to get over it. Japanese internment camps, they're never told to get over it. But when it comes to us, and I don't even know if I'm allowed to say it, but just in case I say it anyway, but I'm not sure if I'm allowed to say it right.
400 years of oppression?
Good call. This is why you're not fired yet. When it comes to that 400-year time frame of oppression, which is actually a little longer, but in particular that 400-year time frame, we're told to get over it to the point where they are trying to rewrite history in our school systems so as to never acknowledge it. You could never rewrite the Adolf Hitler period in time and get away with it. You could never whitewash the internment camps and get away with it. But they weren't slaves. They were indentured servants and happy to do it. What? So that was kind of what he was talking about. And I started to think about a question with that, which is essentially, is our, I don't want to say our inability, but is the fact that we don't forget a hindrance to our progress in moving forward? Does remembering and holding on to past keep you from being able to move forward?
So I'm sorry, you're our guest. Would you like to start?
She said, ugh.
Well, growing up in the town that I'm from,
yeah, you can say it.
Yeah.
Racism,
They probably ain't listening anyway.
racism was still really bad. And, it's a little small country town where we had one grocery store, one stoplight, farmland everywhere. Roads didn't get paved until late in the 90s. But us as kids didn't realize really what was going on because you really weren't treated differently. But when you had the Caucasian friends and stuff, you were friends in school, but you were not allowed to go to each other's houses and stuff. But you didn't know that. I guess it was harder for it not to be talked about from where I was from because my grandmother made sure that we knew. And the main thing about that was she grew up and she was living, I guess during that time she was in New York. And my grandmother used to be scared to take showers. You know, she ended up in the nursing home I was working at. And it was this Caucasian girl that tried to give her a shower in like 2 o'clock in the morning. And my grandmother went off, called me. And so I headed to the job, which they had the doors locked before I got there. They sent the girl home. And so
so she don't catch them hands.
yeah, because that's what I was going there for.
I get it.
You know, because I'm her granddaughter and I couldn't take her in the shower. You know, and so my mom told me that my grandmother used to get sprayed by water hoses.
Gotcha.
And stuff. So she grew up in that time, and which is gonna be a strange conversation even to have with y'all. But my grandmother had an issue with me. I am the lightest grandchild in the family, and I remember growing up not understanding what it really was. And when she called me a house nigga, I didn't have a clue what that meant.
Wow.
And have no clue. I was so lost. So I asked my uncle, what is a house nigger? He looked at me, and he read the
N-word, just in case, N-word.
N-word.
Just in case, N-word. I don't know what Facebook going to do or not, so
yeah.
you know.
So, hopefully I don't put it off. So I asked my uncle, what did that mean? And so he's thinking, you know, because he know where we're from, but he lives in the city. So he said, who called you that? I was like, your mama. So that's the first time I've ever heard them get into an argument. Had no clue. And, you know, he explained, he said, you were never that, you know, but still, he never explained what it meant. You know, we really didn't have the conversations until we started getting older. The guys was trying to date, you know, the Caucasian girls. One of the guys got chased home. They was chasing him home on the back of the pickup truck. And he ended up running to my mother's house. And at the time, my mom was still dating my brother's father. He came outside with a gun. So, you know, so it was like, wow, what is this? So it's kind of harder for some to get over and some not. It really depends on where you're from and what they teach you on it, because they really didn't teach about our history in school. So if our parents didn't talk to us about it, you really wouldn't know anything about it.
Right.
So as far as being able to, I think it does hold back sometimes because your children are angry about stuff they really don't know. You know, but it's good that they do know so they can know why they're being treated different. Because if you don't know why you're being treated different, then that's where the problem lie at. It's the way I see it.
Yeah, for me, there is a fine line between the two arguments for me. So there is the side that is like, we need to move forward. And for me, and I know this is going to sound controversial, but I don't like it when we projected that mentality on one another. So recently I was having a conversation with a friend of mine about colorism. As I was listening to this podcast, and this guy was like, let me do a list of men to not date. And he was like, light-skinned men, because all light-skinned men lie. And this came from a man. And he's about, I want to say, one shade darker than you. Like, not my complexion. I'm like, dude, there might be some people who think you might fall into that category. But the fact that we even still have that mentality, this crabs in a barrel mentality that was taught to us in the oppression period. Is that okay? Yeah, I think I'll do that.
Works. I think that works.
Within the oppression period to divide us. That's why there became a house N word and a field N word, because it was a system of getting us to divide ourselves. That way we couldn't unite. There could be no uprising and saying, hey, look, it one more time and we about to turn this, we about to burn this down. It couldn't be that if we're all on different sides of the fence. If we separate the people who were unfortunately products of SA and by the overseers of the plantation and the people who were of pure skin color, and just to keep them separated, then they could never unite. So as far as like stuff like that goes, I'm tired of hearing that. Like, I'm tired of us separating ourselves within the community. We are the only, African Americans are the only community, and I specifically say African Americans. We're the only community that will have more out with one another than agreement. You don't see that in Jewish communities. You won't see that in Hispanic communities. They don't divide themselves up like we separate ourselves. It shouldn't take a George Floyd for us to stand up and say something is wrong. How about, because this person, even if they don't have the same complexion as me, is my people? How about we stand up for that? This didn't happen to one selective group of us. This happened to all of us. The things that we are experiencing are collective, not individual, based off of our complexion or how much money we make or what we declare or how much Indian we say we have in our family. Like, these things don't matter. We're all still people of color. There are no purebred anybody anymore. If I see one more quote unquote Caucasian person who is like, yeah, I'm pure 100% Caucasian, I'm like, you would be a lie.
Ancestry.com has messed a whole lot of folk up.
Ancestry got some is getting a whole lot of people straight as well. Like, there's no such thing. So why in our own community are we being a detriment of ourselves because of something that came as a result of 400 years of oppression? It's absolute ridiculous. Now, don't forget, like, when it comes to that, let's do away with that mentality. But when it comes to not teaching or denying that it happened, is complete and utter BS to me.
No, I'm positive you want to cuss, you can cuss. Like, they.
Oh, okay. I can use those words. Gotcha.
You're right.
Yeah, but to deny that these things happen when we have documentation. Where you're from, the state of North Carolina has some of the largest oppressive documentation and background. Like, you can go. I was able to trace, and I to this day can't find his name, my father's dad back to North Carolina as Negro boy, and this is where he came from because of their documentation and the way that they documented that whole period in time. Now, there's no name that I could find, but I was able to trace him back to North Carolina. To deny what exists and that it happened. America is one of those countries where, and don't get me wrong, I'm not anti-American. I'm pro-truth. We will throw stones and hide our hand in a heartbeat. And this is one more thing that we're trying to clean up and act like that we did. You did this. Now, was it about financial gain? Absolutely, it was free labor. But the way that you went about it, the same thing you did to the Native Americans, own your mess. Why is it that in every aspect of our life that we have to be held accountable for stuff except for that? This is the only area they have gotten to the point that post-COVID, they put laws in place that are anti-Asian and Pacific Islander hate laws in place.
Quick.
They did that in less than 1 year. But all of a sudden, don't you dare teach facts in school that America, most importantly, white Americans, created some atrocities. Don't you dare speak upon that. And it's not to condemn the people that exist today. Like, I come from a background where my grandma knew Emmett Till. Like, she shopped in the town of Money, Mississippi. Like, they lived in that area. I come from that. I know that my grandfather is the product of an interracial relationship where the African American male was, according to family folklore, he had consenting relations with the plantation's owner's daughter because they were in love, and he was murdered. They had two sons, and the one that could pass got raised by the white family, and the one that did not pass, which was my grandfather, got pushed away. So I know where I come from. Let's not deny that these things happen. At the same time, like, I don't hold that against. I don't look at Jacob and hold that against Jacob.
Right.
I love Jacob.
Shout out to Jacob.
Like,
As you
but-
watch our podcast, your fiance is being mentioned on it.
like, I don't hold the oppression of others and how people were treated or how we were treated back in the day against someone who was born less than 30 years ago, because he's over 20. Like, less than 30. This had nothing to do with him. Like, and even in my addressing their relationship, I was like, look, I have to address a couple of things with you because I didn't raise Ashley that way. Did I teach her our history? Absolutely. I need her to know where she come from. But the ugly side, she's never had to be exposed to. So being down here in the South, and the first time her asking me what a Confederate flag meant, I had to go into detail. And for all intents and purposes, I'm like, this is not to condemn. And I had the conversation in front of Jacob. This is not to condemn you or where you come from. But it's the fact that if you love my daughter and you want to be her husband, you are with a black woman and are going to raise a black woman. Because you two have no children as of yet. Grandson. As of yet. That these things have to address. We can't pretend like it didn't happen. We can't pretend like that these thing isn't an issue today. I had to let Ashley know, you're going to go into some places and people are going to think, what are you doing with him? And some people will get bold enough to say it to you. And Jacob, you coming into a very, very black family. And I had to preempt my mom with the conversation. The first time that I ever brought home a non-black man did not go well. Did not go well. My mom still is affected by the atrocities that happened in the civil rights movement. My mom is still affected by that. And so these conversations need to be had. There can be no interracism without us having the unadulterated, unfiltered conversation.
The thing about it is that it is hard to have the conversation when half of the side doesn't want to acknowledge it. It is the most sincere form of gaslighting, since that's a new term, that has ever been done. Like, so I'm like you. I'm kind of on two sides of the fence. And I come from a perspective where it wasn't readily talked about in my home. But we all knew it was there. I grew up in an basically all black neighborhood, all black school. Nothing but basically, like 98% black was around me all my life. Our greatest rivals were two white schools. And so it was, we heard the words all the time, on the field, on the court, past, but yeah, we heard them. So it wasn't something that we really talked about, but it was also something that was readily present. And so you can't have the conversation, however, if the other side is like, but they weren't slaves, they were indentured servants. And why don't you just get over it? It was 400 years ago. Why don't you just get over it? And the reality is, it really wasn't 400 years ago. Like we make it sound like
Yeah.
it ended and everything has been peachy keen since then. But that's not the case. Like I think states like Alabama till like 1990 or something like that, and Georgia and Mississippi still had slavery language in their laws that were actionable. They just didn't. They just didn't go forth with them, but they were still on the books. Like they just abolished lynching in some states. Like it's 2023.
Still legal in some states.
It is not like this thing has gone away, and so it is hurtful to keep it back and not and act like it didn't happen. But at the same time, we gotta stop blaming everything on it. Like at some point, some type of accountability has to be taken in order to be able to successfully move forward. And I don't mean accountability from the other side.
Mm-hmm.
I mean our accountability. Like, so I know that, that oppressive period or whatnot was horrendous. Thank God I didn't have to live through it. However, that oppressive period is not the reason that in the 80s and 90s a bunch of us were smoking crack.
Mm.
That oppressive period is not the reason why a bunch of black men have abandoned their families. That oppressive period is not the reason why a whole lot of y'all don't like to read. So there has to be some kind of balance where we acknowledge it, but we don't let it hold us back. I think that's the thing, just as a holistic thing. I have a disdain when I hear folks who ain't us, who don't look like us, who don't have our history, say get over it. You didn't go through what we went through, and you don't have the residual scars. Like when I found out that the average melanated person in this country suffers from secondhand PTSD, it was floored. It's a real thing. It's a real thing that therapists are digging into, where it's not that we are directly affected because of we went through it. So it's not that kind of, but we live with the scars of the people who live with the scars, and because they had the scars, we have the scars.
DNA.
Yes, it is, and I knew that was gonna happen. I knew you was gonna do that. Y'all talk while because it's getting ready to flip onto the thing. So y'all talk while I fix. You know what to do.
So, like, to find out, and I was watching TikTok. Okay, so I'm obsessed with TikTok. Saw Ashley's fault. I blame Ashley. She was like, "Mommy, watch this TikTok video," and next thing you know, I was watching a whole bunch. Anyway, so I found out that slavery was actually abolished in 1995 in Mississippi. They were the last state. I had graduated high school and got pregnant and ready to give birth to a whole human being, and slavery was still legal in Mississippi. Can you believe 1995? While all these people talking about Freaknik in 94, it was still legal in Mississippi. Can you believe that? Like that alone, like they finally 130 years after federal law, they finally put it on the book. They literally still had sharecropper plantations that people were working to work off debts to work off debts from their family generations years ago, to people who were dead. Free labor camps in Mississippi. I was floored that these people did not know that they did not have to do what they were doing in order to survive.
And it's 2:23. And it's about what, 96?
95.
95?
Yeah, that's 20 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
I was pregnant with Ashley when this happened. I'm like, how is that even a thing?
And this is why I say it is impossible to move forward if one side's not recognizing what happened at the same time. Read a book. You read a book, it'll tell you a whole lot of stuff. And
Read a book.
I'm serious.
I
Like,
want
read a
us to
book.
get beyond the fact of just having to read a book. Because let me be honest with you, if people like Governor DeFraud in Florida have his way, they gonna start abolishing books.
Well, that's my point. Well, that's what because the reason he's after the books is because there are so many of them that contain the information that we need. When I say read a book, I'm not talking about your textbooks. Most of what we have learned and know about slavery did not come in nobody's school.
Yeah.
It came from the authors and the people who wrote about that that we found in libraries, or we heard about somebody else reading. We got a hold to it. That's what I mean when I say read a book. There's so much information that's out there for us that we refuse to. This should have been a good conversation. We should have had Eddie on for too.
We should have had Eddie. Eddie, are you out there? No.
Because we've been talking about this, we didn't drop down to one.
Oh,
folks do
man.
not like these kind of conversations.
Oh, well.
But this is also even my point.
Like we don't even want to have the conversation. We can't even address it.
And so how can we move forward if everyone is not on the same page with addressing it and dealing with it? The only way to move forward from something is, yes, there has to be acknowledgement of the thing. And it's not just the acknowledgement. There has to be some remorse. Because I'm tired of hearing the other side of the hand be like, well, we know what happened, but that ain't got nothing to do with me. But here's the reality of it. You did benefit from it. The fact that you didn't do it isn't why we're upset. It's the fact that you refuse to admit that you are benefiting from the stuff that your ancestors put our ancestors through. The fact that you're able to, you had not just a 400-year head start in terms of just overall, but the head start you continue to get. It is so much easier to get a loan when you're not melanated. It is so much easier to start a business. It is even with the affirmative action type stuff that our government has put in place. They're trying to get rid of now to help us out, which really statistically has helped more white folks, especially white women, than it has any black person on the face of the planet. So, but that's a whole other topic for a whole other day. Like, all of these things are reasons why you were able to be where you're at, and I'm stuck where I'm at. The fact that you were able to own land and pass land down from generation to generation. Do you understand how much wealth came because somebody in your family had land? And we were promised land we never got because that land has worth.
Like the 40 acres in a mule came with the price because you still had, this is why they still were able to legally do it in Mississippi up until 1995. People thought they were working off the paying for the land that had been sold to someone else.
Wow. And speaking of land-wise, it's crazy because my family owns a lot of land. And in the area, most of us own land. But would sell it dirt cheap, or when the older people started dying off,
The kids didn't want
the
it.
kids didn't want it. So either they leave the land and don't do nothing with it, because if you don't pay your taxes,
The government owns your land.
then somebody can easily buy your land.
Oh, that's a whole nother topic. The way that this country does taxes, property
Yeah.
taxes.
So it's
such
crazy.
a ripoff.
So if my mom does not pay anything else, she pays for that land. To make sure that, the land is there. And I think that my grandparents or their parents was just smart because they didn't leave the land in one person's name. So it's their property. So that way everybody has to get together before
what
you're
my
able
mom
to
did too.
before you're able to sell it.
That's wonderful.
So, of course, that's possibly the only reason why we still have land, because somebody probably would have sold it off, because once they leave that area, nobody really tries to go back.
Right.
And so what they try to do is try to flood out the area. because the dam is in one major city, like when we had Hurricane Floyd. They didn't fix the dam that was in the area, so it flooded out the land. That was the first time that it flooded. Well, during my time. And then it flooded again. People rebuilt, and then the same thing happened again. They had to release the dam. They didn't have a choice but to release it. Either release it enough to keep the dam from breaking, or let the dam break, and then everybody loses everything.
Right.
You know, so after the second time from the flooding, people didn't come back. So whether they're still paying on land or not, I don't know. But that is how most people don't stay in the area now. You know, it's already a small town, so it's really small now because people didn't come back.
Because we don't really understand the value of land. Like, I actually have land, technically. My mom, go ahead. My mom passed on hers and my dad's property to me, Josh and Mel. And much like her mom did, made sure all three of us were, we all had to sign off if anything gets done. I ain't going back to Aliquippa. That is not happening.
But like, even with you not wanting to go back there, and I think this is like a conversation that really needs to be had in a future podcast about our understanding of finances and building and trust and wills and stuff like that. Because the problem is that most people don't understand, like, so property taxes are a complete ripoff. Like, you never truly own your land because you still have to lease it from the government every year. That's basically what it boils down to. Your property taxes are you leasing your own property from the government. And as soon as you miss a payment with the government, then they seize it. And then they will sell it to somebody else for dirt cheap. But, like, understanding that, having living wills and having trust and not allowing one person to make a decision on it, and this is how we build generational wealth. Like, but it takes us to not be so focused on the past and they were able to get away with that. We have way too much social media and the internet, Google, such a powerful tool. You don't have to let what happened to your ancestors happen to you.
Absolutely.
So, like, when it comes to stuff like that, we just have to be smarter about it. And I think if we can learn anything, and really this is what it is, it's purely foolish American pride. It really is. Germany was able to acknowledge their wrongdoings, pay reparations to the people who were wrong, not only the ones who were still living, but their descendants and their descendants. And so they can make right what was wrong. And the fact that they publicly acknowledged that it was an atrocity, not just one man did it, but it was a societal atrocity. And they publicly acknowledged that. We will never get America to admit that we messed up, that we had a wrongdoing. And this is why they won't do reparations. They don't want to admit that we messed up. We treated human beings inhumanely. They will never admit that. And this is why a lot of these countries who do this are advancing quicker than us. And yet we're supposed to be the greatest nation in the world. And we're behind in so many things because of pride. It's just foolish pride. Like, I understand, like, I have my own quips about you and pride. I don't think it's that deep, but that's me. But as far as American pride, like, we ridiculousness. Like, we don't have it to do, and we overtake it. We can't admit that we were wrong, that we messed up. We don't have it all figured out. We were still a young nation and growing. Just admit that what you did was inhumane. We don't even need an apology. It's like Jesus at this moment. Like, an apology ain't gonna help nobody. Just acknowledge that you did it. If you could believe with your heart and confess with your mouth, just do that. Just do that. Just believe that, look, what I did, God does not approve of. And please, if one person comments on this podcast, is this slavery in the Bible? No, that was it was
Whole
not.
different type of thing.
It was not what happened here in America. It was not. It was really a financial thing as well. And those people only had to do it for a certain period of time to work off a debt.
Well, here's the thing. You mentioned you mentioned Germany. The reason I think that Germany was able to successfully acknowledge, eradicate, and move forward from is because, unlike us, they had an actual face.
Yeah.
Hitler was the face. We don't have a face. We have a hue, but we don't have a face. There was no one person responsible for what we went through.
Right.
There was one person responsible in Germany who caused a mass of people to do what was done to the Jews. It was a countrywide decision in America.
Even for the people who didn't agree, there was a group of Puritans who did not agree with it. But yet, it still happened here. They ain't have a choice.
And here's the other thing. So, like, in I want to say it was Saudi Arabia when Saddam Hussein was dealt with. I say it that way. One of the first things that they did there was remove his face off their money. Pull out a dollar bill. $5 bill, $100, pull them out. All you see are the symbols of our oppression. You see it from.
Oh, and don't tear down one of those statues.
That's what I was just getting ready to go to. Them
Robert E. Lee
man,
statue.
Jail.
Ooh, they
which bugs me because
pennies are up all kinds of butts.
y'all lost. America's supposed to be the place of winners. When do we start rooting and supporting the loser?
Losers.
Y'all lost. I'm sorry, but you did. It's not. I didn't write it. I wasn't there. I had nothing to do with it. All I know is y'all lost. And there are more statues of the loser than there are of the winner. That don't make no sense to me either. But so like moving forward, it's a process, and it's a process that is. I don't think this country will ever be able to come to, because both sides can't agree on a starting place to move forward in. One side wants to start 700 years ago. Another side wants to start in 2030. But I feel like if we just as individuals decide to make a decision, I'm going to learn from this, but I'm not going to be hindered by it. And I say that in my quick preacher voice. Apply that to all areas of your life. Learn from your past. Don't dwell in your past. Your past will hurt. Your past will. It's there. It needs to be acknowledged. It needs to be handled. But you can't stay there, because if you stay there, you start blaming everything on it. And like I said, that time frame didn't start the crack epidemic. That time frame didn't start the degradation of our women. That time frame didn't start us deciding we don't want to work in mass numbers the way we're doing. That time period didn't start this over romanticism of the rap culture or sports and this is our only way out. It didn't do that. It's why, real quick, and then we're gonna hit break. As much as I'm not a LeBron James fan, this is why I respect that dude. That dude said, "Here's what I'm gonna do. I'm going to keep some key people around me who have some sense and want to do some things. They don't want to be stuck in Akron. They don't want to be stuck in their little small little surrounding. We're going to build ourselves a team, and we're going to create an empire. I don't just want to play ball all my life, because I can't play ball all my life. But I'm going to play ball.
Because your knees will betray you.
They sure will. Father Time wins always. I'm going to play ball and be the best ball player I can be. But while I'm doing that, on the side, I make some deals, and I'm gonna get in the movies. I'm gonna put my face here. We're gonna do this. We're gonna set you here and help you establish the number 1 agency in sports. Forget what the name of it is now, but the dude who runs LeBron James sports agency, dude is at the top of everybody's list. He has put people together because I've recognized something. I've learned from the past. I learned from what Mike did. Mike built an empire off of some shoes. Okay, cool. What can I do to better that? And yet it's still, unlike Mike, it's still very involved in black issues, speaking and making stands. And here's the parlay. So just recently, I think a couple of days ago, quarterback by the name of Jalen Hurts for the horrible Philadelphia Eagles team, go Cowboys. He, as I say this on the podcast on April 22nd, 2023, because it's going to change real quick, is the highest paid player in the NFL, black man. You know how he did it? He has an all-female, black female agents.
Black girl magic.
They negotiated the highest contract in NFL history for this black man. He saw what LeBron, there's no way he didn't see what LeBron did and said, I want to do that. There's no way these women didn't see what LeBron's team did and said, we can do this. This is what I mean when I say learn from the past, pain and not, and then take it and move forward with it so that you can do something greater with it, or so that you learn from your mistakes from it. This country hasn't learned from its mistakes and won't, which is why it's not moving forward, which is why I'm sorry. We're already repeating it. Yeah. And it's not just black folks this time who are in danger of it. All the Latinos are in grave danger. I just watched a report from John Oliver, and he does it in a comedic way, but he was talking about the farming industry. And I was like, oh, okay, yeah, I know that, farming pays little, and it's mostly Latinos who do it because we ain't picking nothing no more. Y'all got us one time, you ain't gonna get us again.
Ain't gonna get us again.
But when he described the conditions that are legal for them to have, it blew my, I said, this is too reminiscent. They are in shacks. There is video of this one, I guess they call them farm masters. I don't know what they're called. Just berating all of the people that are working under him and telling them, keep playing. I'll call
NSA.
NSA.
I'm sorry, ICE.
Yeah, ICE on you or this, and threatening their families and threatening to beat them, and it was legal. And then at one point called them all the N-word, and then when this news station got a hold to that fact that they did it, the guy, the reporter went to the farm, talked to the wife first. Because it's a husband and wife owned farmland. And she said, well, I don't see why he would do that. We don't have any here. And then the reporter.
Like that was okay.
Yeah. And then the reporter talked to the husband. And the reporters didn't just say we don't have any, said we don't allow any here. And I was like, yo.
Wow, so we're not even going to acknowledge that you said the N-word. And that you mean black people. Wow.
This is what I'm saying. And so if we don't, the cliche is true. If you don't learn from your past, you're doomed to repeat it. So that sounds like a really good time. Take a quick break. We're going to come back with a, hey, listen, if the two of y'all who are still on, do me a favor. Tag some folk in this podcast, because this topic is one you absolutely are going to want to hear, because we're going to deal with something that has been in the news for the last couple of days, and I'm going to have some fun with it. We'll be right back.
This is Real Talk. Real Talk Radio. This is Real Talk. High Praise Ministries presents Real Talk. Real Talk. This is Real Talk. Real Talk Radio. This is Real Talk. High Praise Ministries presents Real Talk. Real Talk. Real Talk.